Hey guys, welcome to the second session of the Garden Talks podcast. I'm Yasmin. I am the creative director of the Brand Garden, and I'm talking to the lovely Charlie. Charlie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm a radio producer, radio presenter, and I just do loads of creative things, really.
Love it, love it. How did you kind of get to where you are now? Like, what was your journey? Like, what kind of stuff did you do to kind of become like a radio presenter?
I feel like I kind of took the traditional route of going to university, but I still combine that with the non-traditional route of just like networking.
Yeah,
I feel like it was music. I've always really been involved in music and I love sound. But I'm not musically gifted. So radio kind of made a lot of sense, and I like communicating, I love talking, and so yeah, I don't know, I feel like sound is just really fun to me, so it
mm,
made a lot of sense to just
yeah,
kind of go down that route.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I was going to say as well, like, in terms of like your creative expression, how do you think that would help you to kind of look after your mental health?
I think it allows me to focus and channel. And I think a lot of the time, a lot of people suffer due to mental health, or I do anyway. And it puts you out of whack and it makes you kind of disorientated.
Mm,
And by producing radio and kind of having like a set hour
yeah,
um to like make and build, and you have to think of all the mechanics and all the branding and the
yeah,
marketing and everything, it just helps me focus.
yeah. No, I think that's a great thing as well. I think definitely like with all loads of different like people that go down different creative strands, they can all kind of say that like being creative and being like within your craft kind of allows you to kind of go into like a different dimension, sort of, where it's like, yeah, like for me, like when I'm doing like songwriting, like you're in that moment and you're kind of writing to how you feel in that exact moment. And I think that kind of translates to like when you're listening to your favorite artist and you hear like it's like a particular lyric, you're like, rah, like, they must have felt really sad, or you know what I mean. So I think it's definitely one of those
Mm.
things where it's like a really beautiful thing to kind of be a part of something. And I think like creativity is so universal as well. Like, I don't know, like do you feel like, in 10 years time, would you kind of want to kind of talk about mental health, or kind of have that as a part of your kind of brand as a radio presenter? Do you think that would be something that you'd want to be talking about more?
See, what's really funny is that my friend and I are looking into starting a charity called Highlighting Minds, which is about highlighting minds, exactly
Yeah,
that, like
yeah,
looking at creatives and people and groups and collectives and kind of understanding their journey and just allowing open conversations about mental health to be included. And I think I've always been interested in talking about mental health, and just activism and advocacy for absolutely anything is
yeah.
really what I love. And mental health is a massive thing. It affects everyone. It affects everyone in different ways. There's so many layers. It's not just your social environment. It's also the environment you were raised in. It's
Mm,
everything contributes to that.
yeah.
Um, and I've ingrained that in so much of my work. Even my dissertation was about the treatment of women in grime, and
Mm,
that had a lot to do with their mental health and the things that women in grime deal with on a day to day. So yeah, mental health is something I think is like super important and
yeah.
should be carried.
Definitely, definitely. I'm just going on to the next question. So, like, are there any like songs, films, TV shows, or books that kind of help you lift your mood when you're feeling low?
Me and one of my really close friends love MF Doom.
Mm,
Rest in peace. But we listen to like, we'll just sit and kind of vent and be sad and listen
mm,
to like Doomsday and Fancy Clown, and that's kind of how we deal with things
yeah,
together.
mm,
But when I'm on my own, I like listening to like hype music. Like I'll listen to like Kia Keys and Crazy Titch and
yeah,
like Shabo. And then I also really like reggae. And I think like you can't be sad when you listen to reggae. Like
no,
you just can't. Yeah.
definitely not.
So so
Yeah,
that's how I deal with that.
yeah, no, definitely. And in terms of, No, I think you touched upon a little bit as I think it was talking about like as a woman within the creative industry as well. Do you think that's kind of had like a detrimental effect on your creativity as well? Because I think as well with me, for example, I found it quite hard to kind of push from that stigma, if you know what I mean. Like for example, I kind of did a thing with this course where it was talking about like women in the touring industry, and there's barely any. And I think it's definitely, you kind of see that in, for example, festivals as well, where there's barely any women in festivals as well. So I think it's definitely. Do you feel like as a presenter, would you kind of want to talk about how there should be more women within the industry, and there should be more women kind of looking to come into the industry as well? Because I think there's definitely not a lot of, I think definitely in the education sector, there's barely any sort of links to kind of go down that.
I feel like women are definitely tokenized. I feel like any
Mm,
minority group is tokenized, whether
yeah.
that be gender or race, economic status. You're
Mm,
tokenized and exploited in the creative industries. And I've noticed that a lot. And I've experienced a lot of gender bias, like being a woman. I had a manager say to me, oh, it might not be great for you to be a producer because, you're quite short and you have to be quite strong to lift equipment. And I was just like, shut up. Like, what are you
ah,
talking about?
yeah.
Um, but I feel like it's important for women to be in these spaces. I feel like women are so powerful and we're so
Mhm.
intelligent, and any just like femme presenting genders, like we kind of deserve to be more present in creative industries. And I feel like it's like male agency really, isn't it? Like men kind of rule every space, and unfortunately the creative industries inhabits that, and
Mm.
especially with music.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous though. I think what there's a festival going on in Crystal Palace Park this year, and I think there's only one female or one headliner. I think it's Megan Thee Stallion, and the rest were just rappers. And I'm just like, it's ridiculous. Like Mahalia, for example, Georgia Smith. Like, what? I don't know.
It makes no sense. It just doesn't make any sense. People just seem to think having one woman is diversity. That's just not diversity in any way, shape, or form. That's actually the bare minimum of the bare minimum.
Yeah, exactly. I think I definitely, for me, and kind of in my longevity in the creative industry, I definitely kind of want to make an impact and kind of make sure if any like other women want to get into the creative industry. I think, like you said as well, it's about networking, kind of getting people to be aware and showing people the different avenues and getting people to speak up about it as well. I think that's definitely, for me, it's quite important as well, is to kind of make kind of create a community and create that sense of like, yes, you can do this, and if you want to do this, here are the people that you can talk to, here are the avenues that you can go down. So I think it's definitely really important to kind of go down that sort of thing. Yeah, and I'll go on to the next question. What techniques or resources would you recommend to any other creatives who are struggling with their mental health?
I don't have any like particular like pages or charities or
Mm,
anything like that. I mean, I'm hoping to kind of make something that would be a resource.
mm,
But generally speaking, I think as creatives, we're so pushed into being immersed in the creative sphere
yeah,
that you almost get FOMO when you're not being creative.
yeah,
And I feel like it means that we don't always have friends that aren't creative.
mm,
And those are the people that I think are most valuable to me in my creative process. My best friend's in like corporate PR,
mm,
and I would be insane without her. Like having stable friends that are in the real world, are in the nine to
yeah.
five world, like that matters so much. Because sometimes you'll just be having an issue and then they're like, this makes no sense. There's just such a logical way to solve this. But your creative brain is like, oh God, like there's just all these things going on. How do I work this out? And you just have that one like stable 9 to 5 friend that's like, this is just not a problem that most people have. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think like when you talk about like, it's when you surround yourself with creatives, I don't know, for like every day, sometimes it can be a lot. because it's just like, oh, like I can't do this or I can't do that. And I'm like, oh, like I'm going through the same thing. Shut up. But
You
it's
can't switch off.
yeah,
And like when they need help, you're giving creative input and you're allowing, like, it's a beautiful situation. But when your creativity is your job, you actually need to learn how to just tap it off.
yeah, completely. And I think that kind of goes into like my next question as well. But like definitely what I've struggled with is switching off from social media. And I think I spoke about this before, but it's always that constant thing of like self-comparison. Like, I don't know, like for example, I had released a song last year and I was always comparing myself with like other artists. And I'm like, oh, I should post this because this person's done this and she's got this amount of likes and she's got this amount of traction on her Instagram. And I'm like, that's not healthy. That's really not healthy. And I'm like, I should be looking up from my screen, not down at it the whole time. You know what I mean? So I think it's like having that time to just switch off. And but I don't know. I think there's also a thing of like, I spoke about this before, is instead of like self-comparing, I think you should kind of also celebrate as well. And I think we were talking about this before where I think women always compare themselves to other women. And I think that's I think it's internalized misogyny, where it's like,
100%.
you know, instead of comparing yourself to another woman, celebrate. Like there's a woman who's doing really well within her craft. She's, you know, she's succeeding. She's doing something that, like, you know, the creative industry kind of holds back on that. So I think that's really something to kind of focus on as well, is like get rid of that self-internalized misogyny. Instead of doing that, celebrate and, you know, be aware of their like success, their success, and get yourself on par with them, if you know what I mean, because they're not you, you know. And to be honest, they won't be thinking the same thing. They'll be thinking, okay, cool, what's next? So I think that's definitely what kind of creatives need to think about, is don't be comparing because they're not you. And I think you know, people have to be aware of their own craft and celebrate their own craft. But yeah, I think definitely social media for me has had like detrimental, but also kind of, it's definitely a love-hate relationship. Would you say that as well with social media?
I have a very weird stance on social media. I don't post on Instagram, and very rarely will you see me properly tweet. I kind of had this weird thing that's like, I feel like media that is super social is just so open and exposed, and it's there for the world to see. Do I really want to give the whole world me? That's a lot. That is a lot. Like when you actually think about that. So I don't know. I don't post on social media, but I have social media and it's so necessary and so important for networking and, you know, staying in contact with people. But yeah, I don't really like social media, if I'm being
Yeah,
quite honest. It
yeah.
makes me a bit stressed.
No, definitely, definitely. And I think I'm just going to go to like the last sort of question. Um, for you, how would you determine success?
I do not think I will ever feel successful, but I set myself goals to achieve.
Yeah,
And that way, instead of society measuring my success, I measure my success. If I
yes,
hit that goal, I'm successful.
yeah,
There you go. That's me. Great. What's next? And
yeah,
it's up to me to set those goals. It's up to me to tell me what's next. I don't want social media telling me what's next or what I have to do. I don't want a man telling me what to do and what's next. If I want to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I'm successful, it means that I've done it and we move on, or we expand and we conquer, you know, we do all of that stuff and we just get on
yes.
with it,
Oh,
really.
love it, love it. I think it's like success is different for anyone, isn't it? So I think like for you, it's setting small goals. I think it's the same for me. Like getting out of bed is a success. Like we've been in a bloody pandemic for the last year as well. So I think like if anyone's listening to this, it's just like, you know, your body has allowed you to survive a pandemic. Give yourself a break. That is
Mm,
success. And I think like if you are struggling to release something, or if you're not ready to release something, that's fine. That's fine, because when you do release it, girl, you're going to be feeling absolutely great. So I think it's definitely one of those things where, like, in terms of, if you go back to mental health again, success can be big and success can be small. It's nothing,
Mhm.
it's completely how you determine it. Don't let any other extremities kind of determine how success is. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. And also rest. I think that's another thing that people like, I know you just kind of touched on this, but I don't think people understand that you can rest and there's more power in resting than there is working yourself sick. Like
Yeah.
to just rejuvenate, that is very powerful and that is that's a tool for success, I think.
100%, 100%. Well, yeah, no, Charlie, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think, like, all the stuff you said, loads of creators will, like, appreciate that. So thank you very much. I know you mentioned charity as well. So if you want, I can add all the kind of information down below in the description as well. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate
Thank you so much for having me.
it. Thank you very much.